by the time Sanjay is getting the mic, etc., just to give you a little bit of a context of what we are intending to do in the next few minutes of time. While our struggle is to keep it short, because we still have one quick session after this to hear from leaders' perspective, and then, of course, spend a lot of time in terms of deliberating over the dinner and so on and so forth. The whole idea is based on a lot of research which we have been doing over the last few years, and we have been strengthening our own research desk with interactions with CXOs and business services leaders across the globe, be it India, be it Europe, be it US, and so on and so forth. And in these interactions, we have heard a lot of perspectives of what is working well and what is not working well for the organizations. To give you a bit of a perspective, we realized when we talk about large corporates, and the large corporates looking the overall context of innovations and disruptions. The biggest challenge the large corporates faces today in terms of disruption and innovation is, the first one is, they are very much siloed. They're still trying to do few things within a function, and a pocket within the function, and a pocket within that process, and so on and so forth. Second, they are trying to claim success themselves by saying, oh, we have overachieved or we have achieved, without even comparing with the industry outside. What is the best practices and where you are, and so on and so forth. The third dimension, which we are finding, there's a huge challenge from that point of view, is that there's still a lot of fixing strategy versus overhauling strategy in terms of looking at what next and what new. As Ravi was talking about, now, next and new. So when you connect that next and new to the processes, you start looking at it. And this is another example of how they can take lot from the startups. The startups today actually are all about focusing on a day-to-day basis how they can overhaul their enterprise processes and functions, be it digitalization or be in terms of their growth strategies and so on and so forth. They're trying to cut as much as possible from the silos point of view, and so on and so forth. Just to give you an example, and how many of you are aware, or I'm sure many of you will be aware, how many tech product startups are there in India? Any guesses? Tech startups, Indian tech startups, active. Any guesses? 50, 100, 200? 200 to 500? How many hands for 200 to 500? How many of you believe it's about 500? Okay, 2 hands. How many of you believe it is less than 200? How many of you believe it is more than 500 to 1000? How many of you believe it is more than 1000? Okay. How many of you believe it is more than 1500? Okay. So it is close to 3000. 2700 Indian tech startup product companies are active today. Every year about 1000 new is getting added. Now they are having their own kind of struggle. They are having their own kind of a journey in terms of growth, etc. And this is where I think what we are finding another interesting challenge and an opportunity for large corporates when they look at compared to the startups is, large corporates when they look up for the transformations, they are usually looking up to big brands as a partner. In fact, there are two parts to it. They're many times trying to reinvent, and I think we heard from the panelists just now, Sudesh and Nitin, talking about it's a mistake sometimes you do by saying I'll reinvent and create something on my own. Can you draw the collaborations? Can you draw the expertise from outside rather reinventing and creating something on your own? And this is where when the organizations have deep pocket, they think I can create myself. And this is the biggest challenge large corporates are doing today. The second one they're doing is they are continuously still going back to the large partners. They are not exploring this ecosystem of partners which are in the new age, which are early age, and they can make huge difference from a disruption and innovations point of view. So they are still de-risking by going to establish large partners rather than looking at innovative ideas, etc. That's a great opportunity for large corporates to come to a startup. That's something which is very, very important. Now here what we are trying to share with you is that this is where everybody talks about digital, tech transformation, tech integrated, and so on and so forth. How many of you heard this term called ITES? ITES. What is the full form ITES? IT enabled services. And how long we have been hearing this? 20 years? Since the time we have got into this industry, right? IT enabled services, shared services, and so on and so forth. In 2018, this is what SSF did. And Sanjay being the co-author along with myself, we actually did a full focus to say ITES is dead. If you continue to look at IT-enabled services, it is not going to work. 2018, we created, much before even COVID, these days everybody is talking about AI. I can tell you half of the people I interact with, they don't know the difference between generative AI and AI. I can tell you at least 5 instances. Yesterday I was sharing with, there are 2 CXOs called me personally to say, my board has mandated me to use generative AI. I have no idea. Can you give me a use case for it? I have a fund for it. They have no idea. Just because board is asking for it, it's a herd mentality. So IT enabled services in 2018, we changed it to say TIBS, tech integrated. How long it will remain enabled? It has to become integrated. So we said it's a tech integrated business services. And now we realized with the kind of rampage in technology which has happened over the period, it calls for moving beyond business services to enterprise services. And it calls for relooking this entire framework and the tool in that light and context, which corporates can use today to reinvent, not just by creating something themselves, but also comparing to a reference point. That is tech integrated enterprise services, guys. So this is what we're talking about, tech integrated enterprise services model. Just to give you another quick 30 seconds on that, and I think this is where all the organizations looks for digital transformation. They all look for these 5 areas, if you can see it in this slide. They look for capacity, and this is all intent I'm talking about based on the research with some 200 plus CXOs. They say capacity optimization, productivity enhancement is what we go for, tech integrated. We want tech digital transformation. We look at process standardization and NV elimination, Mura, Modi, Mura, etc. Typical TQM, right? Lean principle. That is what the reason they look at it. Insights to action to business impact. In the previous session, we had a poll, and many of you talked about decision transformation, real-time analytics, etc. That's the third bullet, which typically all the leaders are talking about to put the money on digital transformation. The fourth one is single source of truth. And this is where organizations are struggling like anything, single source of truth. I was citing an example yesterday, and it's a reality from a very large marquee listed company. The CFO, who also happens to be on the board of that company, he called me and said, I had a big embarrassment. Can you solve my situation? And we said, okay, what was the problem? He said, in the board meeting, I was citing the cash position, and my treasury guy gave a different cash position. So, and I'm talking about a large company, single source of truth. And the fifth one is improved customer experience management. All these are great intents. This is the kind of outcomes we all expect when we do this digital transformation. And I'll talk about some of the myths as well. But these are the kind of expectations we typically have. And we connected that to this whole framework of value delivery. Sanjay, you want to talk about value delivery?
Yeah, Rakesh. So, we've been talking about value delivery for quite some time now, and we try and Ravi's presentation early today also talked about value. And value is a term that we hold very dear to ourselves. And we believe that value is not necessarily just financial. There are a lot of people who talk about value, and but the measure that we get in the marketplace almost always turns out to be to be financial. Many of us are financial professionals or have been, and continue to hold pretty much a similar mindset. Even the shared service centers pretty much almost always begins with financial services being used as the first step or the first processes which get brought into the centers. And therefore, most people believe that if it does not impact the top line and if it does not impact the bottom line, it's not really value. But of late, we've been seeing there are many, many instances, compliances. We spoke about, for instance, AI creating foolproof programs for reporting. Now, when you're doing proper reporting to the various authorities, world bodies, even senior leadership within the organization, the reporting or incorrect reporting, the loss of that incorrect reporting or the impact of incorrect reporting cannot really be evaluated in dollars and cents. So you cannot really say that if you have improved your reporting exercise, if you have improved your governance, if you have improved your compliances, what is the dollar improvement that you've brought into the balance sheet? You just cannot make that statement. Similarly, you cannot make statements such as whether your customers are happy. A happy customer doesn't necessarily mean there's an improvement in the top line. Today you're saying that I have created so many, well, for this purpose I'm just trying to clarify, the customer really means the ultimate customer. Every activity that we do, there's another exercise, and this session is not on value, so I'm not going to spend too much time on value because there is a huge definition of value that we worked out several years of interaction with so many senior people, and we try to pick their brain on that. The only thing that we're going to say is that even if you were to look at this 5 most popularly sought after outcomes, pretty much every one of them is between these 3. It's either a benefit on governance or on reduction of risk or some impact on customer, etc. And none of them is waterproof and none of them is watertight, because they're not mutually exclusive. Several times you do so many things which benefits everything between the 3 circles. So you can actually do some activity or carry out a transformation which improves your customer service and gives you better control and also helps bottom line or the top line, etc. So we will use this as a base for creating a business model or a service model on how we can make an assessment of where we are on our digital journey and what is the gap that we need to fill and where does the gap lie. We've defined the business model under 6 parameters, and all 6 are not technology parameters, they're grouped. And the first group that we obviously understand is the technology parameters group. And all technologies are not the same. There is a huge difference between the technologies. There are technologies that people like us have used 30 years ago with Lotus 123. I don't know if any of you remember that. Lotus 123 period.
Excel was before Excel.
Before Excel. Before Excel, yes. So we've used
macros on that.
We used to write macros on it, slash commands. So, for some people who are the younger crowd here, they will not understand what a slash command is. But we've done that. That was technology. But technology is now archaic. It's like completely gone. It's even beyond dinosaurs. But there are those basic applications that we still use. But we fundamentally classify a group called foundational, and under foundational, we take the very basic applications. Say, for example, you take, which has now become hygiene. You know, you're talking about network, you're talking about email, you're talking about system securities, cyber security. You're talking about some things which we all take for granted, but can have very significant impact if any one of those elements goes out. It's like foundation. It's like the very basis on which you build your processes. And then the second group, I'm just speeding up, Rakesh, because of time. The second group that we call are functional groups. And functionals are the ones which really are the ones which are finance driven, for instance, or HR driven, etc. I'll come to some examples in a bit. And finally, we're talking about transformational. The AIs of the world, for instance, or cloud-based kind of applications, etc., or even ML kind of applications, the very latest applications, blockchain. There are all technologies that are far ahead, they are at the cutting edge today. But there are three elements of the technology model which are as important as they are the technology groupings are. And these ones are the operations groups. And what it means is, breadth and depth is the one most important application or most important parameter, we believe. In all our understanding, in all our conversations, we have seen that while technology gets implemented, so there is a tick in the box, but there are huge gaps on how wide we have implemented this, whether it is to single LOBs, whether it is to single business centers, or to one particular process, or is it wide enough for it to be covering the entire organization, and therefore entrepreneurial level, tongue twister. Depth as well. Are you end to end? Are you just talking about one particular process which you are responsible for, or we are responsible for, or again, are we talking about completely from one part to the other? The other is partnership and collaboration. This is an important element as well, because there are a lot of things that we just do for ourselves, and there is a very important culture of internal partnership, external partnership, which require that depth for us to be able to implement this on a softer level. And finally, the culture. Finally, we find that as much intention that you may have on the board or the chairman or anyone, but so long as you are not able to define the culture of transformation, and that too digital transformation within the company, we will never ever be able to implement those transformational implementations across the organization, because there will be instances of resistance.
Yeah, I think just a couple of points before just moving to here is that what was the need, as I shared with you, to create this entire model? Yeah. And why are we trying to summarize this for all of us is twofolds. We realize that, as I was sharing earlier, there are a lot of self-claimed success which we have. And it may be great, or it may be still primitive. To prove your own journey and build further your journey to the next and new, is important to have a reference to the context by saying, this is where we are in the heat map. This is where we are in the journey. This is where we are in terms of our level of deployment or the quality of output or outcome which we're talking about. It is not piecemeal. This is not in silos. This is having the right kind of breadth and depth. This is also building the right kind of people and culture. This is also looking at, you have a process and a policies to support some of that in terms of further taking it to the next level. What kind of thing which you have in terms of your foundational technologies? Because many times, there are two sides of the stories. We have seen there are companies which says, we have a beautiful ERP deployed like SAP, and we are leveraging it well, so we don't need anything else. Now, yes, it is important, but when we went into diagnostic to understand the level of utilization and controls, we realized they're using only 20% of the features, what they bought. In fact, there are use cases where we have seen they have got the budget approved to buy a new technology for which the same feature and the module was available in the ERP because it was not known to the people who were trying to upgrade or buy. It was only left with some technology folks in terms of when they had that contract or SOW when they bought that ERP, they were not even aware of it. We have seen situations where 200 ClickView licenses bought by the CIO and the CFO. The CIO interestingly reports it to the CFO, and the finance shared services leaders are saying we need some dashboarding tools and we need a budget for it, and then CFO is approving that budget, and then finally we walked in and we figured out we already have 200 ClickView licenses. What are you doing about it? For 2 years no one has used it. Right? So it is about reference to the context to say you quickly get your heat map by saying here we are progressing, and so on and so forth. And then connecting those 6 parameters, there are a lot of double click to that. But just to give you a broad context, we talked about 6 parameters and more level of it. The second dimension of that is this 5 levels. We said no, you also need to understand your level of maturity of deployment and the service which you are able to get through these 5 levels. And you look at these 5 levels, you can see on the left hand side we're talking about level of deployments. And the right hand side, we're talking about the quality or the impact of service which you are able to generate. So left hand side, we talk about something like initiated, regulated, aligned, optimized, integrated. So finally the whole idea is to get tech integrated, but you start somewhere in terms of initiated. So you may find yourself, when you look at these parameters, you are somewhere like regulated or aligned, etc. And we'll share some of that very quickly in the next page. And similarly on the service front, you can see just giving some discrete output, going up to a consistent services, then taking to the next level of non-linear unified delivery. And then finally the level 4 and 5 is all about end-to-end customer experience. End-to-end. There are a lot of touch points in the journey of the customer journey, and we take many times those satisfaction surveys, etc., without understanding the end-to-end customer experience. And finally looking at the value. Now again, 1 or 2 use cases are great, but how to look at the journey towards enhancing value, which is important. So that's a 5-level dimension we have connected with these 6 parameters based on some.
So we'll not spend too much time on this slide, Rakesh. So
Yeah.
a bit of it has been understood. What is the technology?
In fact, just to give you a sense, for example, many times we have seen organizations saying that RPA, is it RPA transformational or RPA foundational? Right? Again, it depends. Is it transformational work which you are getting it delivered, or you are just eliminating that human intervention? If you are just eliminating the human intervention, it is foundational. But if you are able to generate something transformational, changing the way it was operating earlier, that is transformational. If you're only using RPA for some functional work like reconciliation process, it's a functional process, then the same RPA becomes functional technology. So it is not RPA is transformational. It is where and how it is used defines the 3 kinds of parameter of the bucket which we're talking about here. But ERP, DMS, workflow, etc., all is foundational. So if somebody says, I've done all this stuff and I've got some, actually that's another challenge which we face. Many times, at least in India shared services, we are slightly still conscious, but if I talk about some of the global organizations, the starting point they will have is, we have 100 bots deployed. What are they doing? They're still doing manual work, right? They're skin strapping. So what is good about it? They talk about 100 bots, 200 bots, 600 bots, etc. So it is still in foundational. And that's the whole point.
Yeah, so I'll just carry on and actually this one slide. So we put together a 2x2 grid and said if we were to take these 6 parameters of a technology implementation program and plot them against the 5 levels that we just spoke about, then we come with this grid, which is a 5x6 grid, and say, well, where are we on every one of our parameters against the level? Say, if we take our first parameter and say, Okay, foundational technology. When you're saying that you are a foundational technology and you've got some foundations in place, what is level 1? Where you are merely, or should I say simply, initiated to provide discrete output. On a functional level, this means something different. It means that your ERP is a little improved, even though it may be just single BAU or a bit classified into certain silos, etc. Where are you when you're talking about transformation? So actually this is supposed to work the other way around, and that's the reason why this is really a dipstick kind of a model. And say, if you were to go into an organization, and if we were to go into an organization and test against 6 parameters, where are, what is the condition or what is the situation of each of these 6 parameters within the organization, and we can assign a level to it, then it can give us a measure and give us a sense of where we fit with the best in class kind of framework or best in context kind of a framework. And if we make an assessment, a self-assessment, we can figure out the gaps. Say, we seem to be on a certain stage, whereas we believe that we are on, let's say 5, I'm turning out to be on 3. Or conversely, you're saying, maybe I'm lacking on culture. Whereas all we are doing is focusing on technology, and in all the 3 technology lines, we seem to have gone into, the high numbers, into the 3s and the 4s, etc. But you know what? Because of culture, it's all holding us back. And on culture, we are behind. So it's a kind of a self-assessment tool, and we are in the process of creating a tool also which is own use tool. I think Rakesh wants to talk about.
So I think there are, interestingly, the whole idea behind this framework, as I was saying, was twofold. One is knowing where you are, because we need to know what is the point of departure. As we have learned in the process world for the last 20 plus years, is you need to know what is the point of departure, where you are, and what is the point of arrival. As I think when Nitin was talking about when we went to Wellspun about a few years back, look at where is your starting point, where you are today, and what could be the art of possible over the next few years, and putting that strategy together, which I think so well has been deployed to build it like many folds and so on and so forth. So I think what we always believe is you put a point of departure by saying where you are, and you also build a roadmap for you as an organization. Now, building a roadmap has a context to it by your organizational point of view. It is not that a manufacturing company has to follow what a services company has done, or you have to follow exactly what a company A has done and company B also has to do it, etc. You are in a different maturity of as an organization. So you can't be ahead of or a different off from your parent organization. You have to also have a linkage to parent organization, and that is where the context becomes very, very, very important when you look at it. And that's the whole point. We have this tool right now as an assisted assessment and roadmap requirements. So where we are providing that support. Now we are building, and hopefully in the next few weeks of time, we should be having a self-assessment version of it ready, where you can just drop down checklist questions, you answer it, you will yourself get a heat map of saying where you are, what are the opportunities for you, and of course, then you can have more dialogues, discussions with people like us. That's the whole idea behind this entire thing.
You can use it as corporate governance tool, for instance.
Yes.
An assurance tool as well.
It's a management. You can use a management assurance by saying, where you are. We are putting a lot of money on technology. How well you are spending. That's another thing. So it's not just about one use cases. Typically, we talk about a lot of ROIs for that use case, but it's about overarching way of looking at your digital transformation maturity in the journey.
Yeah. Finally, one last thing. This isn't cast in stone. It's a living document. And we created it with our experience, with our understanding, and with conversations that we've had with leaders like you. And more and more perspectives are always welcome and invited to refine the model, to utilize it, to test it. And the previous one that he talked about, which is the 2018 model, was a little bit different from this. That was very well understood. I must admit, it's a change that happens all the time. We changed that model several times. And this one too, we've given it a new name and a new feature because there have been many changes, and this is specifically designed for digital transformation. And so we will invite questions now or anytime later. I don't know how much time we have, Rakesh, but if there are any.
Yeah, and I'm sure we can have more discussions during the break time. In the interest of the time, I'll just take a pause here maybe. And a small tent card is placed on your table, so you get a bit of a glimpse of this model, so that you can take something back from here to really reflect and see how are we doing. And you can, of course, come back with more questions, thoughts, etc. Then we can further fine tune, refine it, etc., etc. That's the quick point.